If I'm honest with you, I'm kind of insecure about my Instagram story reach. So I wanted to do an experiment to see if I could find out what would really increase my story views. We're gonna get creative, we're gonna analyze the data, and we're gonna find out once and for all what really works best on Instagram stories. What strategies can you use to optimize your reach and ensure that as many of your followers as possible are actually seeing what you post? That's what we're gonna find out today, so let's get into it. Over the past few weeks, I have been deep in mad scientist mode. I've been testing things out. I've been gathering data, making observations, and trying to formulate what the best strategy is for getting more reach on my Instagram stories. And honestly, I've often felt like I'm at a bit of a loss as to what should work the best. Here's what I do know for sure going into this experiment. The Instagram story feed has an algorithm, just like the main home feed, just like the Reels feed does. They each have their own unique algorithm that ends up tailored to you as a user to serve you the content that is most likely to keep you engaged on the app. And here's a quick summary of what I have learned so far about the Instagram story algorithm. For one, it is not just chronological. I know this might seem counterintuitive because we all know that your Instagram stories only live for 24 hours. So obviously if people are gonna see them, they need to see them in that time frame. However, the order of those story bubbles, how they show up at the top of your screen, it's not necessarily just chronological. As you can see from this screen recording I took a couple of weeks ago, this story was from 17 minutes ago, and then we bop over to 5 hours ago, and then 3 hours ago. So you see, we're kind of vaguely chronological, but we actually are seeing stuff from earlier. And obviously there's tons of people that I follow that I never see stories from, even though I know they're posting stories. And so to summarize, the order of those story bubbles showing up at the top of your screen, it's based on engagement. It's based on how much the viewers who have seen those stories have engaged with them. They're kind of ranked in that way, and Instagram uses that information to then distribute them or not distribute them to more of your followers. Okay, so we know the stories algorithm is engagement based. It's ranked based on how much people have engaged with your content. So what constitutes engagement? Things like poll responses, sticker taps, likes, question box replies, and DM replies. Those are all things that are essentially upvotes in the engagement algorithm. Things like leaving stories or leaving the app entirely, those are kind of downvotes in the engagement algorithm. So to conclude, we understand that more engagement on your stories equals more reach. As the algorithm sees people replying to your stories, answering your question boxes, answering your polls, it's going to rank your story higher to more people. But how exactly can we optimize for that engagement with our content? That is where my experiment comes in. Going into this experiment, I have two hypotheses. Basically, two different strategies that I think might be the optimal way to get more views on your Instagram story. These two kind of opposite strategies are based on things I've experimented with in the past and talking to some of my creator friends, knowing what they do to get the most reach. So let's break it down. I call these strategies consistent versus optimized. First of all, strategy one, consistent. This strategy is all about frequency. So the idea is you post every weekday, 3 separate times a day, say 9 a.m., noon, and 5 p.m. And each time you post, you're posting probably 2 to 3 different frames. So say at 9 a.m., you post a selfie, a video, and a third photo. And then at noon, maybe you post 2 different videos and a photo. This way, every time you post something new and you get your bubble to the front of that stories feed, your viewer has multiple different pieces of content to consume, and they're just seeing you super often, like multiple times per day. Part of the strategy is, of course, making your content as engaging as possible, using lots of story stickers like polls, question boxes, and trying to entice DM responses. The idea is your content becomes part of the daily routine of your viewer and you'll get a lot of views. Okay, so that's strategy number one. The second strategy is what I'm calling optimized. This strategy is based on the idea that you get the most story views after your story has fully expired. So after all of your story posts have had 24 hours of time elapse and then you have no story basically. A lot of people have observed that when you post for the first time after a couple of days not posting, that's when you tend to get the most views. So the idea with the optimized strategy is that you post 3 times in the work week, say Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So by the time you're posting on Wednesday morning, Monday's posts have completely expired. With this strategy, you're also trying to be as engaging as possible using lots of stickers, trying to get those DM replies. But the idea is your followers don't see you as often, and then when you do post, you get that big boost of reach. Where strategy 1 really leans into that consistent daily relationship, strategy 2 leans into being more optimized, posting just the best story possible because you're doing it less often and hoping to get more reach that way. In the past, the optimized approach is what has worked best for me, but I've heard from some of my creator friends that they live by the consistent approach. Let's just take a quick look at my past analytics so you can see what I'm working with prior to going into this experiment. So these are my story posts sorted for highest reach from the beginning of July until now. My top story post in this time period was this very casual photo of me podcasting. It was the only slide that I posted that day, and I know that I didn't have any stories live when I pressed publish, and it got 6,500 views. Obviously, that's my top post. That's very good for me. Okay, on July 5th, I did actually post 4 slides that day, and a bunch of them are in this top section here. The only thing I can work out is I started with a poll, and this image also generated 11 DM replies, and I personally think that DM replies are the biggest indicator of how far your Instagram story is gonna go. But then more significantly, later that day, I actually posted this selfie that generated 96 DM replies, which is a lot. And I think once that story was getting all these DM replies from my initial viewers who had obviously seen both stories, then the algorithm started posting out that first slide as well, which kind of got me more views. Basically, even if it's not your first slide of the day that gets a ton of DM replies, if you post something later on that does, that'll really signal to the algorithm that, dang, this is some really engaging content, we should show it to more people. In general though, you always will have more views on your first slide of the day, unless there's enough of a time gap that your initial story will expire and then your more new stories will start getting pushed out, then you might see that difference. But usually you're always gonna have some people that slowly drop off and don't make it to the end of all your story content. Okay, last one that I wanted to show you, my July 4th post. So this first slide isn't anything special, so it kind of surprises me that it's up here, to be honest. But the follow-up slide, it got 44 DM responses. Again, pushing out that first slide even further. Now, on the other hand, if we scroll down to the bottom here, where we have less reach, we're kind of seeing that happen when I tend to post more often, like on August 2nd, for example. Not so great results here. So going into it, I'm definitely biased towards the optimized strategy, but I am really curious if I would take the consistent posting route, even if each individual story would have less views, potentially in aggregate, in total, I would have more. Like for example, if you're posting 10 different stories and you get 1,000 views per story, that's still more than if you get 3,000 views per story, but you only posted twice. So to me, it's still really unclear whether the consistent or the optimized strategy is gonna be best, because I've just never fully committed to one or the other, which is why we are doing this experiment. We're gonna get the data to back it up, and when I come back to chat with you in a couple weeks' time, we'll see what the results are. By the way, if you're curious about what application I'm using to look at all of my past Instagram story insights, it's called Dash Hudson, and they're actually the sponsor of today's video. I personally love using Dash Hudson to analyze all of my social media metrics. It's a super user-friendly platform that allows you to create custom dashboards for the exact stats that you want to see. Plus, it's organized in such a visual way, which I think makes it much easier to interpret all of your analytics. I've been mostly looking at my Instagram story views so far in this video, but you can also view all of the stats for your feed content, your reels. Here's a look at my main Instagram dashboard. I can see my overall follower growth, my most engaging videos, and a panel of my top performing videos in general. I find this super helpful for identifying trends and figuring out what style of content I should lean more into to see better results. If you want to use Dash Hudson to start analyzing your social media metrics, then you can sign up for a free trial using my link in the description. And I am back. It has been 2 weeks of posting. First week in the consistent strategy and second week in the optimized strategy, and I'm excited to share the results. So let's just start by going through each week's daily story posts and their results. First week, Monday morning, started off strong. I have to admit, and you'll notice as we go through, did I fully post as often as the consistent strategy would have dictated? No. But I think that is honestly just one of the learnings from this experiment. You can see on Monday, I ended up doing 5 slides, Tuesday 6, Wednesday 4, Thursday just 2, and Friday another 5. And so to me, the first lesson is that the consistent strategy, regardless of results, is just really hard to pull off. You need to be posting very frequently to actually do it 3 times a day, multiple slides per time. But bringing it back to the results, it was interesting because normally Monday morning would be my biggest boost of views because I don't ever post over the weekend. But starting off with the consistent strategy, the results were a little mixed because I only got 2,600 views on that first slide of the day. And I would have thought it would be more because normally Mondays back from the weekend are more. Moving on to Tuesday, I would say this is kind of to be expected. We see the first slide of the day has 1,900 views. That's coming off of yesterday's last slide of the day having 1,987. So this makes sense to me, right? This is one of the side effects of the consistent strategy. Content from yesterday is still live as I am starting to post today's content, right? So it's going to, by necessity, have less views because even if me posting kind of pushes me to the front of the algorithm, people need to watch through yesterday's content before they see this slide. And then again, we just see this taper off throughout the rest of the day. Moving on to Wednesday, we get a little bit of a boost. I think that we maybe saw a few more replies this day, like my Wednesday morning first post of me podcasting, there was a decent number of replies. So I think that might have helped, and maybe what this would indicate to me too is that maybe Monday afternoon's content wasn't that engaging, and maybe once it was finally cleared out, then like views started to come in more so. I don't know. Thursday was kind of our anomaly for this week because stuff came up and I only ended up posting twice. This is also when we got our most viewed story of this week and actually of the entire experiment. And what I definitely think this comes down to is the replies. So even though this first frame that had the most views didn't actually get any replies, the follow-up one had 18, which is quite a lot for me. And so as that second story is getting a bunch of responses, the first one's getting pushed out more. But yeah, interesting to me that this got such a boost because this is normally what I would expect for a Monday morning after not having posted at all. And Friday, we close out the week with our least viewed frame. This doesn't surprise me a lot. Friday morning, I posted some sponsored content, and any influencer will tell you that sponsored content always gets less engagement than just your typical posts. And in particular, the frame where I just re-shared a reel, I think that's not the most effective way to get engagement. For whatever reason, sharing a reel is like, it's gonna plummet your story views. So that was our week of consistent posting. Let's take a look at the optimized strategy. I ended up starting this one on a Tuesday because it was like a long weekend, so I didn't work on Monday. On Tuesday, you can see this is more the typical results I would expect coming back from a weekend. High views because it's been several days since I posted. You can see with this, I'm leaning into the polls and the little stickers. And once I saw that I was getting fairly good reach on those first 2 slides, I decided to follow it up with a call to action to one of my freebies to try to grow my email list. And I think that is something that's good to implement, is when you do see that you're getting higher engagement on your stories, take that opportunity to push something. You probably will get lower views on that because anytime you have a link sticker, I feel like you tend to see lower views, but you might as well take advantage of the reach that you've got. Thursday, we're seeing lower views this day. Now, there's no previous stories to blame this on because the stories would have completely expired before I posted my 9:31 a.m. one. But this probably just wasn't quite as engaging. That first story of the day just didn't do enough to push story replies. And especially the second one is like a pretty explicitly promotional post where I'm talking about my course. So I can see how that would have sort of dragged the views down. And following up with another Monday, because I don't post on the weekends, this is the third attempt at the optimized strategy. And we're seeing fairly good views on that first post of the day. And then it drops down pretty significantly. And again, I think this is because I shared a link sticker and I'm promoting my course. With any social media content, there is always going to be a balance between trying to optimize for engagement and promoting your stuff. And you just need to do both, because if you never promote your own stuff for fear that it's going to decrease your reach, like, you can't run a business that way. So it is what it is. So let's take a look at some of these final numbers and kind of answer my initial question, which was, okay, we know that posting more often might mean that you get less views per story, but Is there the potential that you'll get more views overall just because you're posting more? And the answer seems to be yes. When we look at my first week, which was consistent posting, I posted a total of 22 story frames, which resulted in a total of 45,867 views. In contrast, my optimized week of posting, I posted 9 story frames and I received 26,128 views. Kind of confirming my suspicion that, yeah, posting more often, even if you get less views per post, is going to result in total more impressions. But what did surprise me about this experiment is looking at the average views per post across both weeks. Average views in my consistent strategy week was 2,079, and the average views during my optimized week was actually 2,891. I was personally expecting it to be higher because I think when you are looking at your own stats, you kind of attach on to the most kind of flashy numbers you see. So I remembered seeing, 3,600 or like over 3,000 a couple times. So I would have assumed that's the average, but that's actually kind of balanced out by the fact that I had a few stories that week that only got like 1,900. So what can we learn from this experiment? First of all, I think we have more than enough data at this point to prove that the biggest indicator of a high reaching Instagram story post is how many DM replies it gets, or how many DM replies it's like subsequent posts get. Meaning that if you want to increase your Instagram story reach, the best thing you can do is figure out how to get your audience to reply to you via DM. Lesser signals to the algorithm, but still important, are things like poll responses, sticker taps, and question box responses, but I've definitely seen that DM replies do way more. I think it's also fair to say that we've learned that sharing a reel is pretty much the worst thing you can do for your story views. And when it comes to comparing these two strategies, really the biggest thing is posting super consistently is a challenge. It's gonna be difficult to post like 9 frames per day, for example. But that in general, the more you post, the more total views you will get, even if it means that per story, you're getting less. Okay, so if you want to learn more in-depth tactics for growing your Instagram as a whole, not just Instagram stories, but also reels, feed posts, and how you can monetize all of this, I did just release a fresh update to my course, the Instagram Roadmap, including all kinds of goodies like my Notion content calendar, my personal process for editing Reels in Premiere Pro, and my best strategy tips for growing with Reels in 2023. If you want to check that out, it's linked in the description, or go to the instagramroadmap.com, and I hope to see you over there. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having adventures and following your dreams, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.